Now joining me on the Boardwalk Honda hotline, the co-author of the new book, Tiger Woods, Jeff Benedict, and my guest now, Armen Keteyian, join me right now. Armen, how you doing on this Friday?
I'm good, Josh. I'm kind of watching the Masters on my computer as I'm talking to you, so I'm multitasking at the moment.
Well, I got the Masters over my left shoulder, so I will do my best to not look over my shoulder too much because I know Tiger is just teeing off now. First of all, Armen, congratulations on the book. I mean, I'm already 8 chapters in, and it's a riveting read. And I think one of the things that makes the book so great is that you guys, you and your co-author, Jeff, you spent so much time painstakingly giving this description of the history of Tiger. I think in many ways, I think a lot of people, they may have heard bits and pieces about, but they didn't know the full story. Talk a little bit about the process that went into being able to put together such an exhaustive history of Tiger.
Well, it really started 3 years ago when Jeff and I, decided to do this book, and Simon & Schuster, agreed that it would, with our belief that it would take 3 years. And we spent basically the first year and a half doing nothing but reading and chronicling and putting into a timeline everything of significance that had ever been written about Tiger, which took in 20 different books. We also read books on Buddhism and Navy SEALs and sex addiction and gifted children, trying to get a real understanding, a broader picture of what we were going to be writing about. And then we put together this massive timeline that accompanied encompassed not only Tiger's life, but Earl Wood's life and his mom, Cotita's life as well. And then I looked at 320 transcripts of official tour interviews that Tiger did to kind of understand his mindset and what he was thinking and, mining it for insight. And then we started to do the interviews, and that was 250 people from virtually every walk of his life, 400 interviews in all that we did as we went back to some people time and time again. So it was a massive undertaking. But once we started to write, Josh, we really felt like we were in his head as much as we could be, and that we had a very unique perspective, and that only comes from understanding really Tiger's parents. If you don't understand who Earl Woods was and his motivations, and who Tiger's mom is and her motivations, you really don't understand their son at all.
Armen, in many ways, when you go through the book, you realize that his parents, in massive amount of their overzeal, were trying to prepare Tiger for greatness. And in many ways, we see athletes when they explode on the scene. We've seen in the MMA world with Conor McGregor this week and him acting out. We've seen with great athletes in New York, whether it's Joe Namath or Lawrence Taylor, about their exploits off the field. And in so many ways, Tiger's parents were trying to prepare him for greatness, but it seems like in their overzeal, they tried to create something that wasn't even there, and they were so manipulative of him and his life that it's almost surprising that what happened to him didn't happen sooner.
Well, you're right. I think the word, instead of prepare, I think it's almost program. He was programmed from a very early age, from basically the age of 2. He was considered special then, a genius. His father, once yelled from the garage when Tiger hit a shot in the garage, "We have a genius on our hands." And he was considered to be, the chosen one who was going to change the game of golf, which he ended up doing. He had a remarkable amateur career. He was a transcendent star on the PGA Tour, changed the game as he was predicted to do by his parents. But all of that comes with a cost, and Tiger was not prepared for the avalanche of fame and extreme fame and fortune that came his way, because he wasn't a well-rounded child. He never had a job. He never had to take out the trash. He never made his own bed. He was very pampered and coddled because he was really only expected to do really 2 things: do well in school and practice and compete in golf. And He was a socially awkward, kind of a nerdy kid. And you can only imagine, you're 21 years old and you win the Masters, Tiger Mania hits, and you're thrust into this vortex of absolute fame and celebrity. And he just wasn't really capable of dealing with it. And then everything just accelerates from there.
Talk with Armen Keteyian here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, the new book, Tiger Woods, him and Jeff Benedict. It's an amazing read. I highly recommend it to you folks. Armen, was there a moment or a story or a situation that when you and Jeff heard it or recalled it or read about it, you guys kind of looked at each other and said, oh man, we're on to something bigger than we realized?
To be honest with you, Josh, we probably had that conversation 100 times during the course of the reporting of the book, where whether it was, talking to his kindergarten teacher and her telling us that, she would mention to Earl Woods in parent-teacher conferences that, that Tiger had talked to her about wanting to, play with other kids after school, and whether it was with soccer or just hanging out on the playground, and Earl just, contrary to what he would say publicly, just put a stop to it and said, no, he's going to practice golf. He's going to participate in golf, and that's it. And so that was one. I mean, the true love story of his first true love, Dina Gravel in Western High School in Anaheim, and how they fell in love. And one tiny little moment of that is when, we've all had first loves in high school, and but Tiger had never really had any social interaction with girls, and Dina was one of the most beautiful girls at Western High, a cheerleader, soccer player, tennis player, blonde and very, very pretty. She just leaned against Tiger and sitting in the stands at a football game, and he told her afterwards that it was like electric current going through his body, because he had never had that experience with a girl before, and how they break up and how heartbreaking it is for Dina, and how cold-blooded it was coming from Earl and Tita, who were really behind it. And I mean, there's just story after story after story after story that really, in many ways, just kind of peels away and answers the question that Tiger's people within that inner circle, whether it's Mark Steinberg or whether it's, Glenn Greenspan, they just don't want it answered. And that's, who is Tiger Woods?
Let me ask you that question, Armen. After going through everything that you have gone through, you and Jeff writing this book, chronicling everything, who do you think Tiger Woods is in 2018?
Well, he's a very complicated guy, and I wish I could answer that in a sentence or two, but we would be here all day. For me, that's what 404 pages of the book are about, and you really have to get you have to kind of take this journey with us, and it's Shakespearean. It's not just his rise and the huge run he had dominating the sport, and then the epic fall from grace, and then the absolute public humiliation. And I mean, we can go on, and just in the arc of his life. But ultimately, he's a genius. He's a golfing genius who paid an enormous price for the kind of fame and fortune he had. Some of it self-inflicted in his attitudes and his entitlement towards people who were doing things for him. But some of it he had no control over, if you look at the family dynamic. But ultimately, Josh, he's a changed man right now. I think what happened last Memorial Day in the DUI changed him. It was rock bottom. He's healthy now, physically, but more important, he's as healthy as he's ever been, emotionally and spiritually, and he's a great father. And I think by the end of the book, when you finish it, you're going to feel a certain empathy for Tiger and a complete understanding that he's not a one-dimensional character that was created by corporate America or by IMG or by Nike or any of the other people that had a vested interest in his success. He's a man who's at 42 years old, embarking on a new phase in his life, and he's more human than he's ever been.
Armen, you've covered a lot of stories in your career, from sports to non-sports. For you, where does Tiger Woods and his rise and fall, and then this attempted Phoenix resurrection now that he's doing, where does that all rank for you in your career?
Well, it's by far the most difficult thing I've ever attempted to do because it's a very high wire up there with, it's a long fall if you get something of significance wrong in this book, which we have not. It hasn't been challenged in any form or fashion regarding were there a few inadvertent errors? Yes, those have been fixed and were, some typographical errors in 404 pages. You're going to make those. But I think for complexity and for the pure journalistic challenge of getting people to trust you and to be able to dig in as deep as Jeff and I did, it's the most rewarding in the end for sure, because I've never spent 3 years on something in my life other than, my marriage and my kids. And that's really it, where I've just solely focused on little else than everything else I was doing in television. But for the last year, I've pretty much focused nothing but this book. And, Raw Recruits was a big book for me. Certainly The System was a big book in terms of how it changed people's perspective of college football. But I think in terms of something that was so just personally rewarding, this would be at the top of the list.
The book is Tiger Woods, a exhaustive, detailed description of Tiger Woods' life and how he became who he is. Armen Keteyian co-authored with Jeff Benedict. I highly recommend the book. It sucks you right in from the beginning. I don't want to give it away, Armen, but that beginning of the book,
yeah,
it bites you, it grabs you, and it pulls you in. Yeah. And you don't have to be a golf or Tiger fan to appreciate that. And I'm definitely enjoying it. Armen, thank you so much for joining me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline today.
You bet, Josh. Thank you.